Hi guys, it's your girl Esther. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back guys. Like I told you guys in my last video, I am going to be a consistent babe. My name is now Consistent Esther. Don't watch the jumper though, because it literally has my Nigerian name on it, and I love this jumper so much. It's from Joy in the Box, which I will link down below because your girl has to support her friend's business, and it's just amazing and it's so comfy. So this video guys, I have been thinking about this video for a while because, as I've said in previous book videos, I am a book babe. If I was not doing, you know, faith-based content, I would be doing book-based content. I can't lie, because I love to read. I read so much now. I was asking my mom the other day, like, was I always a reader as a child? Because now I'm literally always in a book. Like I'm consumed by books now. And she was like, no, you didn't really read as a child. So I'm finally interested that now that I'm 25, I read a lot. But to be honest, it really started in the pandemic when we weren't going out. I didn't have a social life. As an extroverted babe, I needed to escape somewhere. And also I was very stressed because I was in my third year, my final year, and that was the most important year and also the most daunting and heavy workload year. So I said, actually, I need something that's not TV, that's not YouTube, to actually give me peace of mind. And I just started reading. And I remember that the first book that I read was Noughts and Crosses, and it was a fiction book by Mallory Blackman, who's literally like the queen of YA fiction in Britain, and also especially when it comes to the Black community. I started reading, and in that year I read 27 books. That was in 2021. And I just could not stop. I was just consuming book after book, whether it was fiction or non-fiction or Christian fiction. My nose was just in a book, and I loved it. There's something about reading that just makes my skin feel so excited. It makes me feel so, like, it's just amazing. And I think also the fact that I'm a writer as well too, it's really been helping me with my writing. So today's video is going to be about books. And if you haven't watched my previous two videos, I've done one in 2021 where I did a wrap up of all the books that I've read, and I did one at the beginning of this year, talking about the books that I read in 2022 and the books that I'm reading this year. That one was like a shortish video because I only read like 7 books in 2022 because the time was just escaping me. And like, you actually have to be intentional about reading. You actually have to make it a priority to read, which is something that I've been learning this year. But this video is strictly a video about the Christian fiction books that I am currently reading. Now guys, I know you're going to say, Christian fiction, what is that? Because sometimes when I tell people that I've been reading Christian fiction and I also write Christian fiction, they're like, what is that? And really and truly, it is fiction with Christian themes, with godly themes. So Christian fiction is actually a very big genre. I don't think people are actually deep how lucrative and big the Christian fiction genre is. Like, if you know Chronicles of Narnia, that is not just a children's book and it's not just a fantasy book, it's a Christian fantasy book. So it has themes of Christianity, but it's actually portrayed through symbolism and metaphors. And C.S. Lewis is literally my guy when it comes to fiction, and he also wrote non-fiction too, more non-fiction than fiction, I actually believe. But C.S. Lewis had an imagination that just blows my mind, and he was actually the first person that I really realized that Christian fiction is actually a big thing, and you can actually be successful in Christian fiction if it's done right and it's done well. So, and also guys, I am so tired of secular books. And I'm really truly not trying to be religious. I'm not trying to condemn anybody that is reading secular books, but I'm honestly so tired and so fed up with secular books, especially secular romance books. There is so much spice, there is so much sex. Like we can't do romance anymore without including some sort of spice or some sort of sexy scene. And I really tried this year to be like, okay, I'm gonna read clean romance, clean secular books. And every time I think that I'm reading a clean book or a clean romance book, it's as if like God tells me, okay, go to the middle of the book. I go to the middle of the book and I see a sex scene, and God is like, nope, don't carry on with this book. And I'm just like, God, this is so frustrating because I want to support people. I want to support Black authors. I want to support authors in general because I am an author. Yeah, I'm going to say I am an author. By God's grace, I will be publishing my books. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm so sorry. I am not. This is my own consecration that I realized even last year when I started reading Colleen Hoover's It Ends With Us. That is like literally the most popular book on the planet these days. And I started reading it and every single page had, yeah, I want to F him, I want to do this, I want to do... And I was just like, what is going on? Even before I read the book, Holy Spirit said, don't read this book. And in my head, I was thinking, I know so many Christians that have read this book. So if they can read it, I can read it too. And I'm not judging the Christians that have read it. That's their own relationship with God, whatever. Maybe they can handle stuff like that. But for me personally, I cannot handle like books, songs, movies being so sexually graphic because of my own personal struggles with lust. So when I was reading the book and God was like, stop reading it, I did hear. The first time I did hear. The second time he told me stop reading it, I did hear. The third time I was literally 150 pages into this book and I still didn't hear until I literally got to the scene where I was like, okay, no, this is actually too much for me. It is way too graphic. What am I doing reading this book? And you know what, yeah, I was so engrossed and I was so captivated by the reading because it was such a fast-paced read and I really wanted to know what everybody's hype around this book was. But from them, I said, okay, look, nope, I'm not reading this woman's books again. I'm sure she probably has cleaner books, but I don't even want to risk it. So I started reading some other romance books where, okay, I thought that it would be a bit more clean. Nope, lo and behold, same thing was happening. Every single book I was reading had some sort of sex scene, had some sort of spice. And I was just tired. I was like, guys, no offense, yeah? Not everybody wants to be actually reading about sex. I want to be reading about spice in their books. I don't want to be reading that. I don't even want to be watching it on my telly. Like, it doesn't appeal to me. It doesn't interest me at all. And I was just like, I'm done with secular books. I'm actually done with secular books. And one of my friends was even like very relatable to me because she was like, this is literally the last fiction secular book that I'm reading because I'm so tired of how exposed and how like it's just so detailed and so graphic that she was just like, I'm moving on. Everybody recommend me Christian fiction. And I started reading Christian fiction. I've always kind of read Christian fiction. So I read Christian fiction last year. I read Christian fiction in 2021. But this year I've been consuming it like no other because, like I said, I just didn't want to read secular based romance books anymore. So this video, I'm going to be taking you through the current Christian fiction books that I have read and why I love them so much, giving you my ratings because I know some people actually don't know where to start when it comes to Christian fiction. So I'm hoping that this video will be helpful and will give you some great recommendations. And for those that even still want to read secular books, fair enough, just make sure that they are clean because some of these people are portraying it as clean, closed door romance and it's not clean. Even if there's no explicit mention of sex, there's a build up to it that I'm still not okay with. And also, again, it's really depends on your consecration because I used to be like to God, like, I don't understand why you allow other Christians to read these books or listen to this music or whatever. And for me, I'm always getting promptings from the Holy Spirit not to do certain things, not to listen to certain things, not to watch certain things. And God was like, your consecration is different. Your consecration is different. There's a reason why Daniel did not defile himself by eating the king's foods because his consecration was different. So let me take you through the first Christian fiction book that I read, and it is written by none other than the godmother of Christian fiction, Francine Rivers. Francine Rivers, hi, Francine Rivers, I really hope I meet you one day, and I just want to say thank you because you were the first Christian fiction book that I read that I was like, wow, there's actually good Christian fiction books. They're not just Christian fiction books that are, you know, about God and nice, but they're also Christian fiction writers that can actually write, that are so talented at writing. And I have to say Francine Rivers is becoming one of my favorite authors of all time, and her books are amazing. The first book that I ever read from Francine Rivers was Redeeming Love, which I found amazing. I actually gave that to one of my friends in church, and I hope she's read it, but I'm intrigued to find out like how she found it. And then the next book that I read was And the Chauffeur Blue. Again, I gave reviews for both these books on my 2021 book video, which I will link here. But the third book that I read of hers that I finished this year, at the beginning of this year, is The Atonement Child by Francine Rivers. This is actually the book that I went to after not reading And It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I bought these both books to Nigeria, and I started reading this in Nigeria, and then I finished it when I got back. This book is amazing. It's very emotional. It's very kind of like, I would describe it as like kind of gut-wrenching, because trigger warning here, it is about a woman that gets raped on her campus. She goes to like a Christian school, gets raped on her campus, gets pregnant, and then she has to decide whether she wants to abort the child. And there are different characters in this book that are telling her, yeah, you should abort it, like God wouldn't be mad of you if you abort it. There's other characters being like, this child is a blessing, you can't abort it, just because you got raped, like it's not the child's fault, and this and that. And this was really the first book that I've ever read that literally had me thinking, like, you know, like when you read a non-fiction book is most likely going to educate you and have you using your brain, but a fiction book is more about escapism. But this one wasn't really about escapism for me. I really started to think about, like, what do Christian women do in this situation when they have been raped and they're thinking about abortion, especially because of everything that was happening in America as well at the time that I was reading this book. It was almost like this book kind of came at the right time to educate me in a way that wasn't non-fiction, because Francine Rivers interviewed real women that had either thought about going through abortion or have gone through abortion in order to write this book. And I could tell, because this wasn't a book where it was like a Christian is judging you, or, you know, saying that you have to do this or you have to do that. It was more of a book about actually understanding, what's her name? Dinah Carey, understanding the thoughts inside of her head, and understanding the journey that God was taking her on and the turmoil that she was experiencing. It was such a good book. It was such an emotional book as well too. I don't cry at books. I mean, the only book that I've really cried at is Fault in Our Stars, but I did feel very emotional with this book, and I would highly recommend. Of course, I will say again, trigger warning, it's about rape and abortion, so I would think about that before actually reading this book. Like, can you actually handle it and everything like that? Because most of the times I actually don't like reading books about sexual trauma or abuse, just because I just find it so emotional, and so like it affects me. I don't even like watching movies or shows about sexual abuse and all of that, because I just don't like books about trauma. But this was so well written, and I would read it again, and I would honestly recommend it for anybody. Again, this is called Francine Rivers' Atonement Child. The next book that I read is one of my mom's favorite Christian fiction books. Like, my mom is a reader. Her books in our library, in our study that I sometimes film my videos in, take up literally half our library, and she has been telling me to be reading this book for months. It's called Redemption by Jacqueline Thomas, and my mom has read it 4 times. In fact, every time we go on a flight, this is the book that she brings, and I just said, okay, let me actually start reading it. And this is actually from my late aunt's collection. She had a collection of Christian fiction that my mum used to take, and my aunt passed away a couple of months ago, and when she passed away, I said, you know what, I'm actually going to read this for her, because I know that this is her book, and I know that she would love to have had me read this, and I'm probably sure that I got my love of reading from her. So Redemption is about an actress and a pastor, and the actress's name is called Marin and the pastor is called Warner Bryce. Now, it's a romance book, and basically the actress, who kind of knows God, doesn't really have a personal relationship with God, or kind of does but doesn't really have a relationship with the church, so she kind of stays away from church, and she's a Hollywood actress. And then she meets Pastor Warner Bryce, who is a pastor of a mega church, and a very renowned pastor at he was preaching at like a Hollywood seminar for actors and entertainers, and that is how they met. And of course, they fell in love. It was love at first sight. God's told Pastor Warner that this is your wife, and then they get married, they fall in love, everything is beautiful, it's happy. Normally I don't really like books that are about love at first sight, just because I think it's unrealistic, and I'm just like, even though I'm a hopeless romantic, I'm like, there needs to be more depth to this. Like, I can't just be seeing somebody on the street and saying, yeah, that person's my wife or that person is my husband. But I ignored that bit of the story and continued to read it because it was captivating me already from the first page, if I'm being very honest. And so they get married, and then a couple of years pass, a couple of years pass, and it kind of goes downhill, because Marin, as much as she got married to Warner, she didn't realize she was getting married to a pastor. She didn't understand the duties of being a first lady of a mega church, and also the sacrifices that she would have to make for her career, because she was doing Hollywood acting, and in Hollywood acting she would have to show skin. She'd have to, you know, do sex scenes with certain actors. She wasn't really ready to have children, but Pastor Warner wanted to have children straight away. So she had to battle that. And what I loved about this book is that it's kind of like symbolic of our relationship with God. Like, you know, the Bible verse that says, I leave the 99 for the one. Marion was kind of that one, because she did not grow up in a Christian household like Pastor Warner. She didn't really know what church was all about. She knew that there was a God and a God loved her, but she didn't really know how to have a relationship with this God. And when she got married, it almost felt like she was supposed to know everything about God and be okay with being a Christian and be okay with being a pastor's wife. But the pressure of the position and the job and the eyes on her was too much, that one day she just went to a party, and it was like for a movie, and the role that she was going to play was a drug addict, and the producer was saying, why don't you just try drugs so that you'll be able to play this part? And when she tried the drugs, she got hooked. And as she got hooked, she escaped from her family, ran away from her husband. Then, to pray for her drug habit, she started sleeping around. She became a prostitute because she wanted to pay for drugs. So she went far. Let's just say that. She went far, but the reason why this book is called Redemption is that even though she went far, God was still with her, and her husband was still loving her and still wanting her to come back to the family, and still able to forgive her in a way. I'm not going to tell you the ending of this book, but the ending of this book was, I still think about it today. I was like, what kind of rubbish ending is this? And that's how I know that a book is good, because if I'm annoyed at the ending, that means that, like, I was so invested in the story, and I was so invested in Pastor Warner and Marin's story. So this book was amazing. I rated it a 4.5 out of 5. I rated Atonement Child 4.5 as well, or 4 stars. Like, the way I rate books is that 4.5 is that I love this book, but I probably won't reread it. Or I might reread it, but I won't reread it many times. And then 5 is that I'm going to reread it probably a month after I finished it, and I just can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop thinking about the next moment I'm going to pick up the book and read about the characters. But this book was fantastic. I would recommend. I still really want to read more of Jacqueline Thomas's books, and I'm planning to, but I can't lie, guys, I've gotten so many books on my list that I'm going to read that me buying more new books is just not smart, and it's not financially wise. So if any of you guys, you know, want to give me an Amazon, I'm joking. I'm just kidding. But this book was fantastic. Highly recommend. I'll put all the names of the books below in the description box. Now, the next book that I read, that I finished like 2 weeks ago, is called Still by, oh, actually, no, let me backtrack. The next book that I actually read before Redemption is called Beyond My Dreams by Olajumoke Adenowo. I don't have it right now because my mom is actually currently reading it, but I'll put a picture of it here. And that book, let me tell you, yeah, 5 out of 5. 5 out of 5. I think I did a video where I spoke about it in the beginning because I was recommending things that I was currently loving, and that was one of the books that I was loving. That book is amazing. So Olajumoke Adenowo, she's not actually like, so all these people that I've mentioned, they're full-time authors, but Olajumoke Adenowo is not a full-time author. She loves to write, but she hasn't actually written another fiction book after this book that I just mentioned, but she started writing Beyond My Dreams as a teenager, as like a 16-year-old, and then finished it and then published it. Beyond My Dreams is an amazing book. I can't emphasize it enough. So it's about two characters, Candice Ishaya and Morola. People just call her Rolla in the book, so I'm just going to call her Rolla. And Candice Ishaya is from a very privileged background, privileged Muslim background, but he becomes a Christian eventually. And then Morola she's also from like a privileged background, like she's well off with her family. She used to live in America and work in America, and then she comes back to Nigeria to do her youth service. And these two different people, they have their lives interrelating to one another. And Candice Ishaya is looking for love, looking for a wife, but Morola is like guarded. She does not care about love. She only wants to do her youth service and then go back to America and continue with her company there, and also kind of start a Nigerian headquarters of the company here. But love is not on her agenda. Candice Ishaya has a lot that went on in his past. He actually works for the military as a pilot, and he had to leave home at a young age, and then he also went to America and went into the military and got trained there, and then he came back to Nigeria like 20 years later. Like his dad didn't even know where he was because of something that happened within their family. And when he comes back, he meets Morola again. It's love at first sight. God tells him, yeah, this babe is your wife and you're going to marry her. And he's just wondering, like, I'm sorry, like, what am I supposed to do with this information? The girl is not even looking my way, and it's kind of creepy, but I won't like spoil the rest of the book for you. But Candice Ishaya's dad is also interested in Morola, so that kind of throws a spanner in the works, because the guy is saying that he's gonna marry Morola, that Morola is like the incarnated wife, dead wife that he loved, that actually is Candice's mom, and Morola reminds him so much of his dead wife that he wants to marry her. And again, this has to do with his faith, his Muslim faith. He was like seeing some sort of, I don't know what you call it, but seeing some sort of the way I can explain it, some sort of juju man that was telling him that your wife is going to come back in the form of another body, and he thought that body was Morola. So they had to deal with that. Candice had to deal with the fact that Morola is guarded, that Morola doesn't believe in love because of something that happened between her mom and her dad, that she believes that all men are basically trash. But eventually, Candice breaks down the walls. And God also breaks down the walls, because God also reveals to Morola that, like, this guy is not a joke. Like, this is your husband. And they eventually get married and begin to live their life together. There's a lot of politics in Beyond My Dreams, which I would say is the only fault of that book, because I was so invested in Candice Ishaya's and Morola's love story that everything else that had to do with politics and Nigeria's corruption and Nigeria's military and everything like that, I was like, I don't care for it. Frankly and truly, I just care about Candice and Morola. But it was very interesting reading the politics too, because it made me understand like why Nigeria is the state that it is today. And I just found it interesting that she kind of weaved it into their love story. And Beyond My Dreams, 5 out of 5 again. Fantastic book. Would recommend to anybody and everybody. I'm going to read it probably when I go to Nigeria this year. Just bring it with me on the plane or something like that. Hopefully my mum would have finished it by then, because Mummy, I love you. You keep saying that you're going to read this book and I've seen you read like 10 pages. You need to finish reading this book so I can reread it. Right, so the next book that I read is actually on my iPad, but I'll put a picture of it here, and it's called Still by Eniola Prentice. Now notice that most of these authors are black or Nigerian, black African Americans or Nigerian authors, and I'm so happy about that, because I'm trying to support my people, I'm trying to support my community. And this is a series, so it's a 4-part series. There's only 3 books out now. By the way, Eniola, if you're watching this, if you ever watch this, I'm waiting for the 4th part, even though I'm currently on the 2nd book and I'm about to buy the 3rd one. I need you I need you to start finishing the 4th part so I can have something to look forward to. So Still is the first part of the four series, and it's about 4 medical students that go to the same medical school, all navigating their lives, their love lives, their friendship, different dramas in medical school, and their faith with God. So all of these people, so the characters' names are Shola, Laddie, Tayo, and Nikki, also known as Nikki, but they call her Nikki. And they are all going to the same medical school, as I said before. They're kind of all interested in each other. So Tayo is interested in Nikki, Shola is interested in Laddie, and they're all friends, and they're all trying to, you know, survive medical school, survive the drama of medical school, and also trying to figure out their faith, because only one of them is actually a Christian, that have grown up in a Christian household and has a relationship with God. Now, I cannot tell you this is the best book I've ever read in my life. It is the best book I've ever read in my life. I finished the first book in less than a week, and it was over 300 pages. The second book, which is right here, that I'm currently finishing, I have less than 100 pages left, and I'm going to order the third book, because something about me, when I read series, I normally read the first 2 books and then forget about all the other books. But this series, I have to finish it. I have to finish it because it's just too much. And so these 4 medical students, they all go to the same medical school, but one of them has a massive secret about another one of the characters. So Shola and Tayo know each other from the past, but it's only Shola that remembers what happened between them in the past. Now, I don't want to spoil it, but it's another trigger warning. So the trigger warning is rape, and something happened between Shola and Tayo, and Shola remembers what happens between them, but Tayo doesn't remember. So in the first book, it's all about navigating through that, being friends in the same friendship group as the man that, I'm spoiling it because it's a trigger warning, as a man that raped you. And seeing him change and seeing him fall in love with your best friend. Shola's best friend is Nikki, and she has no idea what Tayo has done. So the first book is about that, and there's other trigger warnings too, because Shola has struggles mentally. So there's a lot of there's actually a lot that goes on in the first book. Like she to forget the pain of the rape, she starts cutting herself. There is themes of suicide, there's themes of grief, loss, abuse, everything in the first book, and then kind of explored in the second book too. So I would say that if you are going to read this book, make sure you understand the trigger warnings. And then the first book just blew my mind, because I was like, what actually happened between Shola and Tayo? Because all I'm hearing is that this girl hates this boy, and this boy is oblivious to why she hates him. And then when I finally found out, because I had in my back of my mind, it had to be sexual assault, because I'm thinking there's no other reason why you would hate this guy so much and not want to be around him and not want your best friend to be around him. So when I finally found out, I was like, oh God. I was like, this is so much, because it's like, how do you even tell your best friend that this is the reason why I don't like you with this guy? This is the reason why I act so strange and why I'm mentally depressed. So navigating that in the first book was a lot to read about. Like, this book, not only was it captivating, but it was so real and it was so relatable, especially when it comes to the faith aspects, because you have Shola asking questions like, if there is a God, why would he let me go through this? If a God loved me, why would he do this to me? And you know, sometimes we do have those hard questions with God. If God loves us so much, why are we going through suffering? And I just loved how Eniola Prentice explored that in her book. And now this second book is mostly exploring the relationship between Laddie and Shola, who eventually fall in love as well too. But again, Laddie is very close to Tayo, and Laddie doesn't know what happened between Shola and Tayo. So I'm just trying to get to the third book, to where apparently the secret is going to be spilled out. I spoil books for myself, is really bad. And you know, how they're going to navigate that, because this is such a friendship group with so much pain, so much secrets, and also so much, like, God clearly almost ordained them to be together so that redemption and healing and forgiveness can take place. So again, I recommend this book. It's the 3 books are currently out. I'm not sure when the 4th book is going to be out, but you can read the first 3 books and discuss it with me, because I need someone to talk to about this. Most of my friends don't read fiction books, so I'm just there like enjoying my fiction book by myself. But I hope you enjoyed all that video. Again, I should have rated the book. The book is 5 out of 5. The whole series, I've not finished it, but it's a 5 out of 5 series. I don't care what anybody says. And I can't wait to explore and read more Christian fiction, because Christian fiction is so good when it is done well. Because I think some people say that Christian fiction is just boring, it's not done well, they're not good writers. But I believe Christian fiction can actually be done well. When it's done well, it is the most satisfying, the most enjoyable thing to read. So I recommend for anybody and everybody, even if you're not a believer, you would love these books. I promise you would love these books. All the books will be linked down in my description box. If you haven't watched my last video about me completing the New Testament in 60 days, please do. I'm definitely going to do more book videos on my channel, because I just love reading. And until next time, guys, stay blessed. Bye.